Okay, so what we're going to teach, what you guys are going to learn today is something that may look complex, but is actually very simple. Something that I teach my students how to do pretty much in the first year they come here. One thing that firefighters do is a lot of vehicle rescue, a lot of car accidents, all that kind of stuff. So we have to know how to remove parts of the car to get the victims out properly without getting them hurt any more than they already are. So what we're going to go over today is how to remove a door entirely from a car, which a lot of people are amazed at watching, but when you see what goes into it, it's a fairly simple process. So the tools that we're going to need, there's many tools that you're going to use when it comes to vehicle rescue. There's so many I couldn't even list on here, but the tools that you see here are what we're going to use to do this procedure. So first thing we have are wheel chocks. From there we have our cribbing, and we'll get into the cribbing and the wheel chocks here in a little bit. A blanket. A blanket, I don't have it listed on here, could be anything. A sheet, anything that could be used to cover a patient, and I'll explain that here in a little while. Window punch, very small little tool. Most firefighters carry one in their somewhere in one of their jackets, or every fire engine, rescue truck, whatever, should have one on there. From there we have a Halligan. This tool is mainly used for forcible entry into a building or to pry something open, whether it be through a wall, something like that. But we'll show you how we take this hand tool that was made originally for actual fires and converted it to use it for vehicle rescue. Sledgehammer goes along with how we're going to use the Halligan. And then our bread and butter tools are what the commonly known as the Jaws of Life, which is actually a brand name for the Hurst company. So the technical name are just hydraulic spreaders. What you see here, they are also hydraulic cutters that you could use, but for this procedure we're just going to use the spreaders. And finally we have our pump and the hoses. So this is all hydraulic. The fluid that's used in here is kind of like a mineral based fluid. It won't hurt you if it gets on you, anything like that. And we just connect the hoses to the pump, from the pump to the tool, activate it, and as soon as you push the button, the tool moves in and out. Alright, so to be able to know how to cut the car apart and how to access the patient, anything like that, we have to learn about the vehicle, what we call vehicle anatomy, just like human anatomy. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our glass types. So we have laminate glass, which you see here, and you're only going to find the laminate glass on a windshield. That way, if that breaks, it stays together, kind of creates that spider web effect that you see at the bottom of the screen. And to remove this, we actually have to cut with a specialized saw. We don't have to do that for this procedure, so we're not going to get into that. And then our other type of glass that we have to deal with is called tempered glass, which you will see on all of the passenger windows, where all your doors are at, and also on your rear window. So that's found everywhere in the car except the windshield. The tempered glass breaks into tiny pieces whenever it is broken. It will stay together until it's touched. Once it's touched, it'll crumble apart. The nice thing about tempered glass, the way it's designed, when it does break, it fractures in a way that makes it harder for somebody to get cut on, which greatly helps our patient and all the rescuers that are involved. Alright, so now we have the latching pins. This is what holds your door closed when you pull it shut. That way it doesn't open up while you're driving. So the first one we have is called a nadir pin. The nadir pin, probably more common on an older vehicle or a bigger vehicle. These are a lot more solid, harder to cut through, but that's the nadir pin. And the other one is the U-bolt. Like I said, these are found everywhere where there's a door where it latches. So this is what, when you pull the door handle, this is what is the latch itself is being released off of. So we either have the Nader pin or the U-bolt. Your U-bolts are usually found on smaller passenger cars, something of that nature, but both do the same job, serve the same purpose. Like I said, if you have to cut these, the Nader pin is the harder of the two to cut, but for our purpose, we're just going to be spreading the door away from these, which we'll go over here in a little bit. All right, our door hinges. A very important part of the car, part of how it works. As you can see in the first picture, the yellow circles are where your door hinges are located. Every car door will have two, a top and a bottom hinge. And you can see on the other side, we have the part where it shows just a enlarged view of what the door hinge looks like. So we can cut those with a cutter if we want to, but like I said, I'll show you how we're going to just use the one tool and do the whole entire removal. All right, door post. Something that we have to know, that way we can communicate with all the rescuers and everybody kind of is on the same page. So it's very simple. We list these in an ABC fashion. So the A post is where the driver door or the passenger door come in contact with the windshield. So the A post is the same whether you're on the driver's side or passenger side. So there's two A posts, and like you'll see, there's two B posts. B posts are where the driver door and the passenger door come together and meet, and it's the same thing on the opposite side. And finally, we have the C post, which is where the back window and the back door are joined together. So for this, the posts really don't mean a lot, but when we start to do some cutting, if we're removing the windshield or the roof itself, anything like that, but it is important to know, that way everybody's on the same page. A lot of misconception that we see is people think that it keeps going in order. So if you had A, B, C on this side, you would have D, E, F on the other side, which is not true. It just goes down the line no matter what side you're on. So you have an A post on the driver's side, A post on your passenger side, B post on the driver's side, B post on the passenger, and so on. So it just keeps everybody on the same page and hopefully eliminates any confusion. All right, so we get to the accident. We check the scene out, everything like that. First thing we want to do is stabilize the vehicle. We don't want it rolling anywhere or moving anymore. Could cause injury to us who are trying to rescue the patient, more injury to the patient. So the first thing we're going to do is grab a set of wheel chocks and just secure one wheel, doesn't matter what wheel it is, just enough so the vehicle does not have the opportunity to get any momentum. So we're going to throw wheel chocks down, just as you see there in the picture. From there, we can either do a box crib or a straight up crib. So here, as you see where the arrow is pointing, is a box crib. It's kind of like building with Lincoln logs. So we use this for cars that may be higher vehicles, whether it's say a pickup truck, something like that sits higher, or if a car like you see in the picture is on top of another one. These box cribs take up a lot more space, create a more sturdier base, just gives us a better working area and safer working area, as you see there. The other picture is what is called a straight up crib. These are very good for passenger cars that are on all fours, as all four tires on the ground. With that, as you can see there, we just slid in one piece of cribbing, and then from there we have what's called a wedge cribbing that goes on top of that. The wedge cribbing, you're gonna need those for every crib you do, any type of stabilization, because that's what snugs it up. It's hard to, every car is a different height off the ground, every situation is different. That wedge gives us the opportunity to get the perfect fit every time. And you're also going to use the wedges on the box crib as well. So that is the basic cribbing that we're going to do. There's a lot more technical cribbing, different things you can use to crib a car, but these are the most basic and the most widely used. Alright, so we stabilized our vehicle. Next thing we need to do is we need to break the glass on the window. The reason for this is because we want to break the glass in a controlled environment. We're going to need to break it to remove the door. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our window punch and put it in the corner of whatever window that we are trying to break. The reason we put it in the corner is because if we do it in the middle, and our arm follows through, hand follows through, whatever, we could hit the patient. We could potentially cut ourselves, where if we do it in the corner and when that happens with the follow through, the car itself, parts of the car will stop your arm and your hand from going completely through the window. So going back to our original first slide with the tools I mentioned about the blanket, this is where if we are able to gain access in some point of the vehicle, we want to try to cover our patient up before we break this glass. And that's just for kind of like a courtesy and for safety of the patient. They're already injured as it is. We don't want to put more glass on them. So from there, we're going to, once the patient's covered, if we are able to do that, we will break the glass from there. Another little trick of the trade, if you can't access them to put a blanket on them, what you could do is take some duct tape and cover the window in a cross pattern. And once you break the window, the duct tape will hold all the tempered glass together, so you can actually pull that glass out in semi one piece. You probably lose a couple little pieces or whatever, but it does prevent a lot of that small glass getting on the patient. So the window has now been broken. It is time to create a purchase point. A purchase point is just the access point so we can get into the latch to pop it off with the spreaders. So two different ways we can go. We can take the Halligan bar like we talked about before, slide that in the small door opening, use your sledgehammer to tap that in a little bit further as far as you can get it without disturbing the position of the car on the cribbing. And we're going to push down or turn the Halligan down in a downward motion. That way the small part starts to widen out as the Halligan starts to turn. This creates a point to put our spreaders in, and we can start spreading to pop the door off of the latch. The other picture you see is using a set of spreaders to create your purchase point. You would activate your spreaders so that they will fit inside of the window frame. Once you get a snug fit, you'll continue to spread that frame so it will spread the door apart and out, and you will create your purchase point that way. I prefer the one with the Halligan. It's just a lot safer with the patient. You're not putting the big rescue tool right next to where they're sitting, but it's all personal preference and whatever you think may work in that situation. It's all situational. There is no right and wrong. It just whatever will work for you at that point in time. So we've created our purchase point. It is now time to pop the latch. So as you can see there, they're putting their spreaders in where they made their purchase point, and they are going to start to spread. So they're going to spread their tools from front to back. That spreader is going to pull that door away from the latch, and eventually will pop the door off the latch. Now the door is made of a thin sheet metal, and then you have your actual door panel on the inside. You want to try to do your best to keep all that together as you're spreading. If you start to spread that thin piece of sheet metal away from the door panel itself, the door loses its integrity and makes it a lot harder to get the door off in one piece, and will actually slow you down in the process. So it's one of those things where you just have to, over time with the practice, you'll be able to get the door off more effectively. But that's one of the things you want to watch out for when you're popping the latch off. So once we get that popped off, the door will now swing on the hinges. May not swing fully open because of the damage to the car, but it'll swing open enough where we can get in there and do some more work. So here you can see that we have the door pulled open, and now we're going to pop the hinges off. So the first part I'm going to show you here is actually using just the spreaders to pop the hinges. You're going to start at the top first, put your tip of the spreaders on top of the top hinge, and spread the door off and spread completely until the entire hinge is removed from the car. From there, you're going to put your spreaders on top of the bottom hinge and do the same process again until it pops the latch or the hinge entirely off of the car itself. You may have another piece of metal there. Sometimes it does break itself whenever you take the top hinge off. And there's also going to be some wires in there that control the door locks, maybe power windows, stuff like that. You're also going to have to either cut those, or sometimes just by spreading you do pull those enough that they break, but you may need a pair of wire cutters to cut those and finally get the door entirely out of the way. Once the door is totally off, remove that out of the way. That way it prevents any trip hazards. Our other picture over here is just another option that you could use. What they're doing here is, instead of using the spreaders, they're actually using a pair of hydraulic cutters, which I talked about in the beginning, to instead of separating the hinge from the car itself, they're just going to cut right through the hinge and remove the hinges that way. Another great method to use, there's no problem with that. I just like using the spreaders because I don't have to worry about getting another tool in there, taking time to switch tools out. I can do this entire process using just that one tool, which are the spreaders. But like I said, it's all personal preference and whatever the situation may call for. So the door's been entirely removed. It's now time to complete the removal of the patient. So not only do we have to remove the car door, we now have to, the reason we're removing that is to remove the patient. So like I said, remove that door all the way out of the way, throw it off to the side of the road for the time being, do everything you can to create less of a trip hazard. Remove all your tools out of the way, because as you can see in the picture, we're going to have to start getting that stretcher in. There's going to be more people. So once we get all our tools out of the way, EMS can move in to help get the patient out of the vehicle. As the fire department, we can also help, as you see there in the picture. So once the patient is on the stretcher and secured, we can now clean up the scene and proceed on. The picture you see there is actually my students in my class doing a vehicle rescue scenario. So they learn all the same stuff and use all the same tools that I just talked about now. So that kind of does it for the slideshow. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something.